Right, okay, so for my government sanctioned exercise, I'm coming on my bike again. So I thought I'd do a bike and psych about something I've recently developed and delivered a program for, which is working from home. So I've created a program for this on the platform Udemy, which if you're interested in going and having a look, you can. I also have management courses on there. But I thought I'd talk about a bit of that anyway, so you don't need to pay for it if you listen to this. And because obviously everybody's talking about and thinking about working from home at the moment, I thought a good subject would be working from home. So I thought I'd give a few tips and tricks about that. So I work from home a lot. I have done for quite a few years now. I do visit sites from time to time, but I would say the vast majority of my work is at home, either developing courses or working on evil sheep stuff. And so I've sort of learned a few things, but I've also done a bit of research specifically for this subject to find out, what works and what doesn't, what the evidence suggests and so on. So I'm going to share some of that with you. I suppose the first thing to talk about are the potential benefits of working from home. So there's been a lot of talk about flexible working and working from home for a long time, and I think most people, well, depending on your job, if you have a job where you sit at a computer or you answer the phone, even if you do customer service, which probably involves both, some of your time may be spent working from home, or if it's project management, you can do a lot from home. Obviously, if you're working in a factory or on a building site, then it's different. But I think a lot of people have had some experience of that already. But it's not quite caught on to the degree that I think it could have done, obviously, until now. So the first thing to say is that there has been some research on this, and one of the most well-known pieces of research is a kind of experimental study, but a field study with a company called C-Trip. Now C-Trip happened to be a Chinese travel agency, and all of their staff work in call centres where obviously they take calls and help people book holidays. And they decided to try for an experimental study, and they chose half at random of their staff to work from home. From memory, I think it was for 6 months, it may have been more. And the other half, a big percentage anyway, of their staff working from home, and then the rest doing what they always did, which was not work from home. And this study found that the group that worked from home, that group were 13.5% more productive than the group who didn't work from home. Now 13.5% is actually a staggering amount for any intervention. So if you're an improvement manager or something, and you do something that isn't investing, millions of pounds or dollars on kit, it's just something you do about organising the staff. If that yields a 13.5% increase in productivity, then that's pretty damn good. You've done a really good job. So that's a kind of staggering result, and it's been talked about a lot. They found that a third of that was basically down to fewer distractions. So one of them, I suppose, myths potentially working from home is that people have too many distractions at home, but they found the opposite in this study, that working from home you had fewer distractions. So working from home you have fewer distractions than working from an office. And I suppose I can understand that really. I mean, having worked in a big open plan office, I know that it's so easy to get distracted. Somebody comes and chats to you about the holiday, or you know what they watched on TV last night, and before you know it, 10 minutes have gone by, or 20 minutes, or half an hour. So that was part of the picture, and the other 2/3 was that people actually went to their desks longer, or stayed at their desks for longer. Well, there is a potential risk there in terms of perhaps overwork, or being tied too much to your desk. But basically this boiled down to people not nipping out to do errands, or just not having to spend time in traffic or commuting, and they felt happy to sit at their desk and do a bit of work. So anyway, so that suggests that there's quite a lot of benefits from working from home. Of course, if your job suits it. That's the big caveat. So I come up with this little acronym that I've used in my course that you might find useful, because it's all very well saying, working from home can yield 13.5% productivity improvements, but that does to some degree depend on how you do it. So how do you do it? So I've come up with this acronym called CARES. So what I'm saying is, a manager who wants to look after their team working remotely needs to be a manager who cares about their remote team. So this is, I suppose, beholden on managers particularly, but obviously it's useful for everybody to know. So what does CARES stand for? CARES. So let's see if I can remember it from memory. So C stands for communication. So if you're going to work from home, or if you're going to have a team working remotely, then it's probably pretty obvious that you need to pay a bit more attention to communication. So that communication needs to take a lot of forms and different sorts of communication for different reasons. But basically it means think about how you're going to communicate, how you're going to plan your communication, how you're going to make sure it happens. Because unlike your previous situation, where you probably just didn't even think about that because you were there with them, if your team are working remotely from you and you're remote from them, that's not going to happen naturally over the water cooler. So my recommendation is to plan communication. If you're not very good at doing one-to-ones, get better at it. If you're not very good at doing team meetings, think about how you can do team meetings remotely. If you're not very good at appraisals or performance reviews, or whatever strand of regular discussion about performance takes, whatever form it takes, get better at it, because you can't quite get away with just kind of bumping into somebody and asking them if everything's okay. So, communication. The A stands for agreed norms. So this is particularly appropriate if you're in a team, or you're a manager of a team who are not used to working from home or remotely. And if you're not used to that, then there will be very few norms. What do I mean by a norm? Well, a norm is a sort of accepted set of behaviours, the way things are done. So we all have norms, there'll be norms around what time you get in, how long you take for breaks. Sometimes that'll be written down, other times it'll just be an accepted norm. Good example, how does the tea run work? So in an office I worked in a help desk, and everyone was kind of expected to make a cup of tea for everybody, or coffee, at least once during the day. They go to the machine, take the order, go to the machine, and get everyone a drink. That wasn't part of the rules, it just was something that we did because it was a norm. New person start, hey new person, what we do here is, and there's a whole set of those that need to be kind of agreed. Now some of those will just develop, but I think it's important for you, if you are the manager, or if you're not the manager but have some strong opinions, then it's a good idea to start discussing some of those norms and think about what they should be. If you are a manager, I would certainly recommend that you talk to your team about what those norms should be. Okay, so that's agree norms. So that's the C, that's the A. Communication, agree norms. What's the R? The R stands for routine. Routine and schedule. So in the office, you will have had a routine. Again, it could be that people are expected to come in at a certain time, go to lunch at a certain time, maybe they're staggered. So there's a routine. You might have a morning meeting every morning, you might have a weekly meeting, or a set of other meetings. So you'll have a set of norms. So you'll have a routine, I should say. And that routine is kind of useful because everybody knows what those fixed points are and they can arrange other things around them. It also, for many people, it does as good to have that routine. Now, there is an element of individual differences here, so perhaps not everyone loves a routine quite so much, but generally some routine, some schedule is considered to be good both in productivity terms and indeed psychologically. Okay, but flexibility is also required. So whilst the routine is good, trying to dictate as strict a regime as you might have had at work, or in the office I should say, in my view is problematic. So you might say, well, they're doing the same job, I expect them to make their first call by X o'clock and so on. Well, okay, fine, but if you do that, you're potentially giving up on some of the good bits of working from home, and you're simply trying to replicate what is done. And I would argue you're unlikely to get your 13.5% productivity increase that way. If you demand that everybody's at the desk at such and such, you're allowed half an hour at such and such, and I guess that's what will happen, but you may well not get the extra bits that people did in that study just because they wanted to. So that's routine and schedule, so good to have one, but I guess don't overdo it. Okay, what's next? The E. The E stands for expectations. And expectations in this setting is really linked to many of the others. In fact, many of these you cannot really separate fully. But expectations are what you as a manager, if you are the manager, the expectations you have for the team members in terms of performance, numbers if you like, output, whatever it is that you care about as a business, as a team, just the same as you would have in the office. You need some expectations in terms of output. I suppose the big difference is how they achieve those. There may be more flexibility because of the fact they're working from home, and that's really what makes the difference. Okay, that's the E then, clear expectations, smart goals, goals that are clear, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, have goals. Okay, we're on to our final letter of the acronym CARES, and that's S, and that is support. So if you're a manager, your team are suddenly working from home, or even if they've done it before, it's easy to forget that they need support, and especially at this time where many of us are in lockdown. There's lots of horrible news on TV, frightening stuff. Of course it's frightening for everyone, you included, but your team, if you are a manager, needs some support. And I would argue that actually that goes both ways. Of course not everybody listening to this, Psych and Psych, is a manager, but if you think about CARES, a lot of it applies to all of us really, whether we're a manager or not. So that's the principle of working from home. CARES, communicate, agree norms, routine and schedule, set clear expectations, and support. And if you do that, then you've got a good chance of making it work. You might get your 13.5% increased productivity that way. What else can we talk about? So one of the factors that I think is useful to think about is mental health, working from home, and some of the risks. So one of the risks are this boundary crossing between home and work. So if you do work from home, you probably realise that sometimes it's difficult to switch off because your workplace is the same as your relaxing place. So a couple of tips there: if you can, have a separate area. That might be difficult if you've got the whole family at home, but if you can, have a separate area where this is your workspace, and once you leave your workspace, you know, even if you only put a few feet between you and it, then you're done with work. If you can, switch off your mobile phone, your work phone. Don't check your emails. Don't make work exactly the same as home. That's kind of dangerous. So that's one little tip. It's common sense in many ways, but it's easy to get that wrong. I've done that myself and continue to have to struggle with that. It's obviously evil sheep is me and my daughter Celine, and especially as we're on lockdown at the moment, Celine lives with us, so we're all together pretty much all the time, certainly me and Celine are. And of course we talk to each other about work a lot, so there are dangers there. Another element that I think relates to mental health is this thought about rumination. So if you've heard about cows ruminating in the field, when they seem to be chewing on something for a long time, obviously they've eaten grass and then they will regurgitate it and chew it some more. It sounds pretty disgusting, but it's part of their process for nutrition. But this word rumination has come to mean we can mentally ruminate as well, and I think for some of us it's easy to mentally ruminate, and working from home there's more opportunity to do that because you don't get the chance to clear that thing up. So maybe you've had a meeting on Zoom or something, somebody said something that you thought was a little bit off, and before you know it you're sort of thinking about it, you're dwelling on that comment that she made or he made, and it just keeps niggling away, and you think about it before you go to bed, and you wake up in the middle of the night, you're thinking about it, and you wake up and you're thinking about it. And 9 times out of 10, when you ask the question, or if you go back into the office, you find there's nothing going on there, but you ruminated on it. Or if there was something, it was kind of easily solvable, but you ruminated on it, and the rumination is worse than the event itself. Working from home or working remotely, so much more chance to ruminate because you're not able to perhaps bump into somebody and just say, okay, sorry if I upset you, or I just wanted to ask you about such and such. and you feel like you've got to make more of an effort to sort it out, and that feels a bit uncomfortable, hence the rumination. So rumination is generally considered to be a very bad thing for us. I take it from a Olympic level ruminator, is that a word? It's not good for us, so don't do that. One of the things that we can do to avoid that goes back to our C of cares, is to communicate and have opportunities to catch up with each other when there is not necessarily a clear reason for the meeting. Now this cuts across general meeting advice, which I think still applies to meetings. So let's not call it a meeting, let's call it a catch-up, just a chance to chat to somebody, because that is part of what we normally do in a social environment, and because we can't do that so easily, we have to make a bit more of an effort. So whilst formal meetings should have a clear reason why, smart goal, agenda, all of that, I recommend there's times to just have a catch-up with somebody. Let's have a catch-up. You might not even talk about work for some of that time, or all of that time. It might be just wanting to catch up. How's the family doing? How's it going with you? And so on. And I suppose the final bit I want to talk about is to do with more general mental health at work, thinking about some of the models. So there's a model called Job Demands Resource Model, and I'll put the authors of these theories on the screen and on the description below. So the job demands resource model basically says that for us to manage our mental health, there's this balance really, and the balance is related to, we have demands at work. Our job demands stuff of us. We have demands from customers, we have demands from our managers, from the job itself, demands we might place on us. And then we have these resources, internal resources, that I guess hopefully balance out those demands. And those resources are partly our own strength, if you like, resilience, if you like. It could also be the support that we have from our manager. It could be skills, it could be abilities, it could be knowledge. So really it's about trying to find a balance for these to combat, I suppose, the demands that are placed upon us. If you sense that you're lacking in some of those resources, or your resources are depleted for some reason, that could be because of stress or because of other things that are happening, then you need to seek help. And that help could be from your manager or another team member, or it could be a coach or somebody that you can ask for help, and that helps you to balance that out. There are more complex models, but I think that's quite an easy one to talk about without having to get diagrams out, and it kind of makes sense. So I guess that's all I'm going to talk about working from home. I hope that's been useful. It's part of a course, as I said, that I've developed. If you want to know more, get in touch. The other thing I want to say is please subscribe to the channel. You'll have noticed that the channel is very eclectic. There's all sorts of things that we do. I talk about stuff, but we also do make short films. Celine, my daughter, has a very different take on life. Of course, she's much younger than me. She's my daughter, so she's coming at things from a different perspective. So it'd be great if you subscribed. Please like if you like, and also comment. It'd be great to talk to you about some of these things we're doing. Thanks again, and stay safe.